today's episode of Nothing Major. We got all of our segments from last Monday, Winner's Circle, major news, locked in. Let's get into this packed.
Before we get into this, I want you to think about who actually fills a stadium these days. Not who's ranked first. Not who has the most Grand Slam titles. Who fills a stadium? Because the answer to that question in women's tennis right now might surprise you. And 4 guys who spent a combined 4+ decades on the ADP Tour just said it out loud. Here is the moment. Sam Querrey, former world number 11, sitting across from Steve Johnson, John Isner, and Jack Sock on the Nothing Major podcast. February 24th, 2026. Querrey poses a question that, 12 months earlier, would have gotten him laughed out of the room.
On the woman's side is Eala. I don't even know if I'm saying her name right. Is she the... How do you say it, Stevie?
I don't know, but I just...
Is she the biggest draw in women's tennis right now in the world?
Yes.
Is she big? Is she bigger than Sabalenka? Is she bigger than Coco? Is she the...
My question to you guys is on the women's side, Alexandra Eala. Is she the biggest draw in women's tennis right now in the world? Is she bigger than Sabalenka? Is she bigger than Coco? Steve Johnson's answer was one word. Yes. Then Querrey pressed, bigger than Sabalenka, bigger than Coco? And Johnson didn't hesitate. Dude, it's crazy. She's having the same effect that Fonseca was having on the men's side last year in Miami. Every court in Australia, standing room only. Then in Dubai, standing room only. It's insane. The crowds she's getting right now all over the world are insane. And then Querrey finished the thought. She was unknown until Miami last year. I think we can all kind of agree on that. But she is just like an absolute rock star. For former ADP players, none of whom have any particular reason to be promoting Filipino tennis, sitting around talking honestly about what they're seeing from event to event. And all 4 of them landed in the same place. The biggest draw in women's tennis right now is a 20-year-old from Manila who, 18 months ago, nobody outside of the Philippines had ever heard of. Let's talk about how that actually happened, because the story doesn't make sense unless you trace it properly. March 2025. Miami Open. Alex Eala walks into the draw as a wild card ranked 140th in the world. No seeding. No expectations. Most casual fans, and honestly, most tennis journalists, couldn't have picked her out of a lineup. She had been grinding through the lower tiers of the tour for years, a product of the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain, producing solid results at the WTA 125 level, but not yet breaking through at the top tier. Miami was supposed to be a learning experience. A chance to see the lights up close, play a round or 2, collect some points, go home. She beat Madison Keys. Then she beat Elena Ostapenko, the 2017 French Open champion. Then she beat Iga Swiatek, who at the time was one of the most dominant forces women's tennis had seen in years. 3 Grand Slam champions in a row, eliminated by a wild card nobody had previewed. She made the semifinals, where she lost to Jessica Pegula. She left Miami with a top 100 ranking for the first time in her career. And something else happened that week that the statistics don't quite capture. The crowds were different. Sections of the stands that had been half empty for other matches were full for hers. Filipino flags appeared throughout the venue. Fans were loud, not politely enthusiastic tennis crowd loud, but loud in a way that the chair umpires weren't entirely sure how to handle. The tournament noticed. The media noticed. And by the time she was done, the conversation had shifted from who is this girl to where did this fan base come from and how big is it? The answer to that second question is something the tennis establishment had genuinely underestimated for years. John Isner put it plainly on the same Nothing Major episode. It's everywhere. It's a huge market. I think a lot of people underestimated how big that market is. They finally have a star on the women's side of the game. It would be the same if they had a men's star as well. There are some huge markets with untapped potential. They just need players to emerge and make a name for themselves. That's what Alex has done so far. The Philippines has a population of over 115 million people and a diaspora that extends across every continent, with the largest single concentration in the United States, roughly 2 million people in California alone. That is not a niche market. That is a sleeping giant that had never had a player at the top level of women's tennis to rally around. No Filipino woman had ever cracked the WTA Top 100 before Eala did it last year. None. The market was fully formed and had nowhere to go. Then she arrived, and it had somewhere to go. The pattern that started in Miami repeated itself at every tournament she played through the rest of 2025 and into 2026. Australian Open in January, hundreds of fans turned away from Court 6 because the stands had overflowed. The chair umpire repeatedly asked the crowd to quiet down during points, which is almost unheard of for a match involving a player seated outside the top brackets. Abu Dhabi, Auckland semifinals. Dubai, where she beat 6-seeded Jasmine Paolini in straight sets on her way to the quarterfinals. At every stop, the same thing. Organizers assign an outside court, ticket demand surges, and by match day the tournament is quietly scrambling to move her to a show court. The Fonseca comparison that Johnson made is instructive here. Last year in Miami, João Fonseca, the Brazilian teenager, had matches that literally had to be moved because the outdoor courts couldn't contain the crowds that were following him. The walkways overlooking the courts were packed with people who couldn't get seats. The tournament had to rethink their scheduling midweek. That is what happens when a player from a massive, underrepresented market suddenly emerges and the entire fan base mobilizes at once. Johnson watched that happen with Fonseca and then turned around and saw the exact same phenomenon happening with Eala, on a scale he described as even more international and more sustained. And the commercial world has been paying close attention. Before she flew to California for Indian Wells, Eala stopped at the Nike World Headquarters in Beaverton, Oregon. She is a Nike Global Ambassador, and what was waiting for her in that building said everything about where she stands in their portfolio right now. Along the Nike hallway that features the brand's greatest athletes across all sports, the Michael Jordans, the Roger Federers, the Serena Williamses of the world, there was a new series of portraits. Alex Eala's face on those walls, celebrating her career milestones, celebrating her heritage, celebrating her flag. She posted a photo of herself standing next to the largest one, hands on her face, the same gesture she had made on court in Miami when she realized she had just made the semifinals. Nike's relationship with her has consistently been about more than tennis. At Wimbledon last year, the brand gave her a custom hair tie to wear during the tournament, the sampaguita, the national flower of the Philippines, embroidered into it. It came in a box with a handwritten message in Filipino, Kung may tainanim, may anahin. If you plant, you will harvest. That is not a generic endorsement deal. That is a brand that understands exactly what she represents to a market and is building an identity around it carefully and with real intention. So when she walked into Indian Wells as the 31st seed, the first time she has ever been seeded at a WTA 1000 event in her career, she arrived as something genuinely unusual in professional tennis. A player whose commercial footprint and crowd-drawing power had already outgrown her ranking. As one analysis put it, she is not yet a slam champion, not yet a top 10 fixture, not yet the most decorated player on tour. But wherever she plays, the stands fill first for her matches. The tournament director at Indian Wells, Philippe Dor, wasn't subtle about it when Front Office Sports asked him. He said the tournament loves every minute of the Eala effect and benefits from it directly. A day in the life video the BNP Paribas Open posted with her became their most watched YouTube video of the year by a significant margin. This from a tournament that has Sabalenka, Swiatek, and Gauff in the draw. Her Instagram following now sits close to 1 million, more than double what players at a comparable ranking typically have. Clips of her matches routinely outperform those of higher-ranked players in terms of raw digital engagement. Now, there is an honest conversation to have here, and it is one that Eala herself has been willing to have publicly. The crowd-drawing power is real. The commercial momentum is real. The ranking, now at career-high 28 following her run at Indian Wells, is real. But the gap between where she is and where the very top of the sport lives is also real, and she knows it. After the Dubai quarterfinal where Gauff beat her 6-0, 6-2, a scoreline that left no ambiguity, She stood at the press conference podium and said this, "At the end of the day, I think there's definitely still a gap in terms of level between me and Coco and other players of her caliber. My job is to try and close that gap, and I think I'm doing that quite well. So I'll keep working on it, and hopefully next time it will be a bit tighter." 14 days later, she walked onto Stadium 1 at Indian Wells and led that same Coco Gauff 6-2, 2-0 when Gauff retired with a nerve injury in her left arm. The scoreline does not fully answer the Dubai question. Injuries complicate narratives, but 54 minutes of tennis, where she dictated play, won 9 winners to Gauff's 6, and committed 12 unforced errors to Gauff's 26 is not nothing. The path is closing. What makes the Eala story genuinely different from most breakout narratives in tennis is the sequence of events. Normally in this sport, you win the titles first, and the fans come second. You crack the top 10, you win a major, and then the brand deals arrive and the crowds build. The traditional hierarchy goes: results lead to recognition, lead to commercial value, lead to cultural significance. Eala is running that sequence in a completely different order. The cultural significance came first. The fan army mobilized before the ranking demanded it. The commercial power arrived before the Grand Slam titles. Nike put her face on the wall in Oregon before she had ever been seated at a 1,000 level event. And now the results are beginning to catch up to everything that preceded them. That is genuinely unusual. The tennis establishment, which has a long institutional memory and a deeply ingrained sense of how stardom is supposed to be sequenced, is still trying to figure out what to make of it. There is, as one analysis noted this week, an unspoken tension inside the locker room when a player draws center court energy without center court seniority. That tension is real. It is also, frankly, not her problem to solve. She said something at the start of this year that I keep coming back to, when asked about her goals heading into 2026. "It's so nice to know that I'm doing what I can for the sport because tennis has given me so much." That is not the quote of a player who is performing gratitude. That is someone who genuinely understands the exchange. Tennis gave her the Nadal Academy, the training, the structure, the path. She is giving back crowds that the sport had not seen coming, from a market the sport had not properly valued, at a scale that is now forcing scheduling committees at major tournaments to rethink how they build their day sheets. For former ADP pros, a collective 40-plus years of experience at the highest level of the game, sat down and said, unprompted, that a 20-year-old from Manila is right now the biggest draw in women's tennis. Not a future star, not a player to watch. The biggest draw, present tense today. The fans who packed those Miami courts in the spring of 2025 already knew. The fans in Auckland and Dubai and the California desert have known all year. The experts are catching up. The question now, and it is a legitimate one, is whether the results can fully meet the moment. Can she get to the top 10 by year's end? Can she make a deep run at Roland Garros, where the Nadal Academy Clay Court Foundation ought to translate? Can the scorelines against Gauff-level opponents start looking more like the Paulini result in Dubai and less like the Gauff result in Dubai? Drop your answer in the comments. I am genuinely curious where people think the ceiling is. If you've been on this channel for a while, you already know we've been tracking this story since before most of the tennis media caught up to it. Hit like, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you for the next one.